Ryan Goswami Maharaj, Shri Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vishnupara Shatarasata Shmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Shatarasata Shmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vishnupara Shatarasata Shmad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vishnupara Shatarasata Shmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Maha-Bhagavat Srila Gorakshas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhattadash Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shad Vrinda ki jai. नाम आचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदाते गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मोहन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाय की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि गो। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। नमो ओं विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्री श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणीति नामिने। नमो ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवो विनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयमुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृतं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्णा पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तना हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीन अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्तष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavat pranams, Gargaraj ji, Rup Manjari Didi, Indira Mataji, Madhavi Didi, and Ganga Didi. Dandavat pranams. So yesterday was a pretty exciting chapter. Just go over very briefly. So we read about Jaḍa Bharata's birth and avoidance of a bad association. Bharat was born as a Brahman son. He had a twin sister. While internally thinking of the Lord, externally he acted like a madman. And his father failed in his various attempts to educate Bharat Maharaj. His father was very attached to Bharat Maharaj. He never gave up on him, but eventually he died. And then Jaḍa Bharata, I forgot to say Jaḍa Bharata. Jaḍa Bharata. Jaḍa means like inert, or Jaḍa Bharata was mistreated by his stepbrothers and others, but he accepted everything with indifference. Let's see from here on. So after his father died, Jaḍa Bharata's 9 stepbrothers, although learned in the 3 Vedas, were not spiritually enlightened. They considered Bharata dull and couldn't understand his exalted position. Thus, after their father's death, they abandoned their father's attempt to educate Jaḍa Bharata. When degraded people, 2-legged animals, addressed him as mad, dull, deaf, and dumb, he neither protested nor tried to convince them. When others engaged him in work by force, as a slave for wages, he acted according to their desires. He would eat whatever food came of its own accord. He never ate anything for sense gratification, as he was already liberated. He was full in the consciousness of devotional service, and thus unaffected by dualities. Strong as a bull, he did not cover his limbs in the cold, heat, wind, or rain. Because his body was not properly maintained and dirty, his spiritual effulgence and knowledge were covered, like a gem covered by dirt. He wore only a dirty loincloth, and his sacred thread was blackish. Ignorant people would call him a Brahma Bandhu. Being thus insulted and neglected by materialistic people, he wandered here and there. Brahma Bandhu means somebody who's not, somebody who's a Brahman by birth, but they're like, you're not qualified to be a Brahman. You're just a Brahma Bandhu. You're just like a relative of Brahmins. So he would work only for food. Taking advantage of this, his stepbrothers engaged him in agricultural work, though he did not know where to spread dirt or where to make the ground level or uneven. They would give him broken rice, oil cakes, the chaff of rice, worm-eaten grains, and burnt grains that stuck to the pot. But Jaḍa Bharata gladly accepted all this as if it were nectar. Note: Bharat Maharaj was determined to finish his business in this material world. He was not at all caring for the world of duality. He was complete in Krishna consciousness, and he was oblivious to good and evil, happiness and distress. Then we read how the dacoits tried to sacrifice Jaḍa Bharata to Bhadrakali. Once, a leader of dacoits, desiring a son, was offering Bhadrakali, a dull man, in sacrifice, a Purusha Pashu. But the man animal intended for sacrifice had escaped by chance, and the leader ordered his followers to find him. Wandering here and there in the middle of the night, they found Jaḍa Bharata, who was guarding a paddy field. They considered Jaḍa Bharata to possess qualities quite suitable for a man animal. In happiness, they bound him and brought him to the temple of goddess Kali. Note: being completely surrendered to the Lord, Jaḍa Bharata did not protest being brought for slaughter. According to their concocted ritual, the dacoits bathed, dressed, and decorated Bharat with ornaments, sandalwood pulp, garlands, and tilak, and they fed him sumptuously. They had him sit before Bhadrakali while offering incense, lamps, garlands, sprouts, fruits, flowers, etc. They sang songs and prayers and sounded drums and bugles. The chief priest, desiring to please Bhadrakali with the blood of Jaḍa Bharata, raised his fearsome sword, consecrating it by her mantra. Then Kali protests. Kali protects Jaḍa Bharata and kills the dacoits. So then verse 17 this is why Jaḍa Bharata shouldn't be killed. The dacoits were low-minded and envious, bound to lower modes, overpowered by the desire to become rich, audacious enough to disobey the Vedic injunctions, and were ready to kill Jaḍa Bharata, a self-realized soul and Brahman, a cruel and unauthorized act even in an emergency. Whereas Jaḍa Bharata was the best friend of all, no one's enemy, always absorbed in meditation of the Lord, born of a good Brahman father, so killing him was forbidden, even if it were an enemy or an aggressive person. So Goddess Kali, she understood that the sinful dacoits were about to kill a great devotee, and so her deities burst into, and she personally emerged from it in a body burning with an intense and intolerable effulgence. Intolerant of the offense to the devotee, the infuriated goddess Kali displayed her fierce curved teeth, frowning brows, and glowing reddish eyes. She assumed a frightening body as if to destroy the entire creation. Leaping violently from the altar, she immediately decapitated all the rogues and thieves with that very sword. She then drank with her associates the hot blood that flowed from their necks as if it were liquor. Becoming intoxicated, she began to play with those heads, tossing them about like balls. When an envious person commits an offense before a great personality, he is always punished in this way. Link. How was Jaḍa Bharata undisturbed by this and not showing anger to those who tried to kill him? Answer. It is no wonder that the highest devotees can be undisturbed even if threatened by decapitation. They have severed the tight knot of bodily identification and are friends of all, acting for their welfare. They never contemplate harming anyone. They are always protected by the attentive Lord with his chakra. They completely take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. Alright, so now chapter 10. In this chapter, Bharat Maharaj, let me just make sure everything's working. Looks like it. Hari Bol, Raseshwari Mataji. So in this chapter 10, Bharat Maharaj, now Jaḍa Bharata, was successfully accepted by King Rahūgaṇa, ruler of the states known as Sindhu and Saurvira. The king forced Jaḍa Bharata to carry his palanquin and chastised him because he did not carry it properly. A carrier of King Rahūgaṇa's palanquin was needed, and to fulfill this need, the chief carriers found Jaḍa Bharata as the most likely person to do the work. He was therefore forced to carry the palanquin. Jaḍa Bharata, however, did not protest this proud order, but humbly accepted the job and carried the palanquin. While carrying it, however, he was very careful to see that he did not step on an ant, and whenever he saw one, he would stop until the ant had passed. Because of this, he could not keep pace with the other carriers. The king with the palanquin became very disturbed and chastised Jaḍa Bharata with filthy language. But Jaḍa Bharata, being completely freed from the bodily conception, did not protest. He proceeded carrying the palanquin. When he continued as before, the king threatened him with punishment, and being threatened by the king, Jaḍa Bharata began to talk. He protested against the filthy language used by the king when the king chastised him, and the king, hearing the instructions of Jaḍa Bharata, was awakened to his real knowledge. When he came to his consciousness, he he understood that he had offended a great, learned, and saintly person. At that time, he very humbly and respectfully prayed to Jaḍa Bharata. He now wanted to understand the deep meaning of the philosophical words used by Jaḍa Bharata, and with great sincerity, he begged his pardon. He admitted that if one offends the lotus feet of a pure devotee, he is certainly punished by the trident of Lord Shiva. We learned in our shloka group, we learned a shloka from this. What was it? Anyways, yeah. I forgot how it went. Anyway, the Bengali rendition of that from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Anyways, we'll get there. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Ata Sindhu Saurvira Pate Raghunasya Virajata Ikshumatyas Tate Tat Kula Patina Shivika Vaha Purushanveshana Samay Daiveno Prasadita Sadvija Vara Upalabdha Esha Piva Yuva Samhananango Go Karavar Duram Vodum Alam Iti Purva Vishti Grihitai Saha Grihita Prasabam Atar Arha Uvaha Shivikam Sa Mahanubhava. Shukadev Goswami continued, My dear king, after this, King Rahūgaṇa, ruler of the states known as Sindhu and Saurvira, was going to Kapila Ashram. When the king's chief palanquin carriers reached the banks of the river Ikshumati, they needed another carrier. Therefore, they began searching for someone, and by chance, they came upon Jaḍa Bharata. They considered the fact that Jaḍa Bharata was very young and very strong and had firm limbs. Like cows and asses, he was quite fit to carry loads. Thinking in this way, although the great soul Jaḍa Bharata was unfit for such work, they nonetheless unhesitatingly forced him to carry the palanquin. Yada hi dvija varasyeshu matra valokanugater na samahita purusha gatis tada vishamagatam swashibikam Rahūgaṇa upadharya purushan adivahata aha me vodhara sadvati kramata kim iti vishamam uhyate yanam iti. The palanquin, however, was very erratically carried by Jaḍa Bharata due to his sense of non-violence. As he stepped forward, he checked before him every 3 feet to see whether he was about to step on ants. Consequently, he could not keep pace with the other carriers. Due to this, the palanquin was shaking, and King Rahūgaṇa immediately asked the carriers, Why are you carrying this palanquin unevenly? Better carry it properly. That's a threat. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although Jaḍa Bharata was forced to carry the palanquin, he did not give up his sympathetic feelings toward the poor ants passing on the road. A devotee of the Lord does not forget his devotional service and other favorable activities, even when he is in a most distressful condition. Jaḍa Bharata was a qualified Brahmin, highly elevated in spiritual knowledge, yet he was forced to carry the palanquin. He did not mind this, but while walking on the road, he could not forget his duty to avoid killing even an ant. A Vaishnava is never envious or unnecessarily violent. There were many ants on the path, but Jaḍa Bharata took care by looking ahead 3 feet. When the ants were no longer in his way, he would place his foot on the ground. A Vaishnava is very kind at heart to all living entities. In his Sankhya Yoga, Lord Kapila Dev explains, Suhrida Sarvadehinam. Living entities assume different bodily forms. Those who are not Vaishnavas consider only human society worthy of their sympathy. But Krishna claims to be the Supreme Father of all forms. Consequently, the Vaishnava takes care not to annihilate untimely or unnecessarily any life form. Sorry, you got that. Untimely or unnecessarily any life form. All living entities have to fulfill a certain duration for being engaged They have to fulfill a certain duration for being encaged in a particular type of material body. They have to finish the duration allotted to a particular body before being promoted or evolved to another body. Killing an animal or any other living being simply places an impediment in the way of his completing his term of imprisonment in a certain body. One should therefore not kill bodies for one's sense gratification, for this will implicate one in sinful activity. Atata Ishvara Vacha Sopalambam Upakarnyopaya Turiyach Chankita Manasastam Vigyapayam Babhuvu. When the palanquin carriers heard the threatening words of Maharaj Rahūgaṇa, they became very afraid of his punishment and began to speak to him as follows. Purport. According to political science, a king sometimes tries to pacify his subordinates, sometimes chastises them, sometimes derides them, and sometimes rewards them. In this way, the king rules his subordinates. The bearers of the palanquin could understand that the king was angry and that he would chastise them. Na vayam naradeva pramata bhavan niyamanupatha sadveva vahama ayam adhunaiva niyuktopi na drutam vrajati na nina saha vodum uha vayam parayama iti. O Lord, please note that we are not at all negligent in discharging our duties. We have been faithfully carrying this palanquin according to your desire. But this man who has been recently engaged to work with us cannot walk very swiftly. Therefore, we are not able to carry the palanquin with him. Report. The other palanquin carriers were Shudras, whereas Jaḍa Bharata was not only a high caste Brahmin, but also a great devotee. Shudras do not sympathize with other living beings, but a Vaishnav cannot act like a Shudra. Whenever a Shudra and Brahmin Vaishnav are combined, there will certainly be imbalance in the execution of duties. The Shudras were walking with the palanquin without at all caring for the ants on the ground, but Jaḍa Bharata could not act like a Shudra, and therefore difficulty arose. Sangsargiko dosha eva nunam ekasyapi sarvesham samsargikanam bhavitum arhatiti nishchitya nishamya kripana vacho raja Rahūgaṇa upastita vridopi nisargena balatkrita ishar utita manyor avispashta brahma tejasam jata verasam iha rajasa vrita matir aha. King Rahūgaṇa could understand that the speeches given by the carriers who were afraid of being punished. Did I say that? Anyways, he could understand their speeches. He could also understand that simply due to the fault of one person, the palanquin was not being carried properly. Knowing this perfectly well and hearing their appeal, he became a little angry, although he was very advanced in political science and was very experienced. His anger arose due to his inborn nature as a king. Actually, King Rahūgaṇa's mind was covered by the mode of passion, and he therefore spoke as follows to Jaḍa Bharata, whose Brahman effulgence was not clearly visible, being covered like a fire covered by ashes. Purport. The distinction between Rajogun and Sattvagun is explained in this verse. Although the king was very upright and advanced in political science and governmental management, he was nonetheless in the mode of passion, and therefore, due to a slight agitation, he became angry. Jaḍa Bharata, despite all kinds of injustice endured because of his deaf and dumb display, remained silent for the strength of his spiritual advancement. Nonetheless, his Brahma Teja, his Brahman effulgence, was indistinctly visible in his person. Aho kashtam bhratar vyaktam uru parishranto dirgam advanam eva eka uhivan suchiranati piva nasanghanananko jarasa chopadruta bhavan sake no eva para ete sanghatina iti bahu vipralabdho vidyaya rachita drava guna karmashaya sacharama kalevare vastuni samsthana vishesheham mamet anadhyaropita mitya pratyayo brahmabhuta stushnim shibikam purvavad uvaha. King Rahūgaṇa told Jaḍa Bharata, "How troublesome this is, my dear brother. How troublesome this is, my dear brother. You certainly appear very fatigued because you have carried this palanquin alone, without assistance for a long time and for such a long duration. Besides that, due to your old age, you've become greatly troubled." Very sarcastic here. "My dear friend, I see that you're not very firm, nor very strong and stout. Aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you?" In this way, the king criticized Jaḍa Bharata with sarcastic words. Yet despite being criticized in this way, Jaḍa Bharata had no bodily conception of the situation. He knew that he was not the body, for he had attained his spiritual identity. He was neither fat, lean, nor thin, nor had he anything to do with a lump of matter, a combination of five gross and 3 subtle elements. He had nothing to do with the material body and its 2 hands and legs. In other words, he had completely realized his spiritual identity. What verse is this? Okay. He had completely realized his spiritual identity, Aham Brahmasmi. He was therefore unaffected by this sarcastic criticism from the king. Without saying anything, he continued carrying the palanquin as before. For some reason, whenever it says Aham Brahmasmi, it's omitted from here. Purport. Jaḍa Bharata was completely liberated. He did not even care when the dacoits attempted to kill his body. He knew that he was certainly not the body. Even if the body were killed, he would not have cared, for he was thoroughly convinced of the proposition found in Bhagavad Gita 2:20, Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. He knew that he could not be killed even if his body were killed. Although he did not protest, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his agent could not tolerate the injustice of the dacoits. Therefore, he was saved by the mercy of Krishna, and the dacoits were killed. In this case, while carrying the palanquin, he also knew that he was not the body. This body was very strong and stout, in sound condition, and quite competent to carry the palanquin. Due to his being freed from the bodily conception, the sarcastic words of the king did not at all affect him. The body is created according to one's karma, and material nature supplies the ingredients for the development of a certain type of body. The soul the body covers is different from the bodily construction. Therefore, anything favorable or mischievous done to the body does not affect the spirit soul. The Vedic injunction is asango hyayam purusha. The spirit soul is always unaffected by material arrangements. Atapuna swashibikayam vishama gatayam prakupita uvaha rahūgaṇa kim idam are tvam jivan mrito mam kadarti kritya bhartrishasanam aticharasi pramattasya chate karomi chikitsam danda panyar eva janataya yatha prakritim swam bhajishyasa iti. Thereafter, when the king saw that his palanquin was still being shaken by the carriers, he became very angry and said, "You rascal, what are you doing? Are you dead despite the life within your body? Do you not know that I am your master? You are disregarding me and are not carrying out my order. For this disobedience I shall now punish you, just as Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, punishes sinful people. I shall give you proper treatment so that you will come to your senses and do the correct thing. Evam bhavapadam api bhashamanam naradeva bhimanam rajasa tamasanuvidhena madena tiraskritashesha bhagavat priya niketam pandita maninam sa bhagavan brahmano brahmabhuta sarvabhuta suhridatma yogeshvara charyayam nati vyutpana matim smaya mana eva vigata smaya idam aha. Thinking himself a king, King Rahūgaṇa was in the bodily conception and was influenced by material nature's modes of passion and ignorance. Due to madness, he chastised Jaḍa Bharata with uncalled for and contradictory words. Jaḍa Bharata was a topmost devotee and the dear abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although considering himself very learned, the king did not know about the position of an advanced devotee situated in devotional service, nor did he know his characteristics. Jaḍa Bharata was the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He always carried the form of the Lord within his heart. He was the dear friend of all living beings, and he did not entertain any bodily conception. He therefore smiled and spoke the following words. Purport. The distinction between a person in the bodily conception and a person beyond the bodily conception is presented in this verse. In the bodily conception, King Rahūgaṇa considered himself a king and chastised Jaḍa Bharata in so many unwanted ways. Being self-realized, Jaḍa Bharata, who was fully situated on the transcendental platform, did not at all become angry. Instead, he smiled and began to deliver his teachings to King Rahūgaṇa. A highly advanced Vaishnava devotee is a friend to all living entities, and consequently, he is a friend to his enemies also. In fact, he does not consider anyone to be his enemy. Suhrida sarvadehinam. Sometimes a Vaishnava becomes superficially angry at a non-devotee, but this is good for the non-devotee. We have several examples of this in Vedic literature. Once, Narad became angry with the two sons of Kuvera, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, and he chastised them by turning them into trees. The result was that later they were liberated by Lord Krishna. The devotee is situated on the absolute platform, and when he is angry or displeased, there is no difference, for in either case he bestows his benediction. Brahman uvacha Tvayoditam vyaktam avipralabdam Bhartu samesya jadivirya bhara Kantur yadisyad adigamya madhva Piveti rasho na vidam prabadha. The great Brahman Jaḍa Bharata said, My dear king and hero, whatever you have spoken sarcastically is certainly true. Actually, these are not simply words of chastisement, for the body is the carrier. The load carried by the body does not belong to me, for I am the spirit soul. There is no contradiction in your statements, because I am different from the body. I am not the carrier of the palanquin. The body is the carrier. Certainly, as you have hinted, I have not labored carrying the palanquin, for I am detached from the body. You have said that I am not stout and strong, and these words are befitting a person who does not know the distinction between the body and the soul. The body may be fat or thin, but no learned man would say such things of the spirit soul. As far as the spirit soul is concerned, I am neither fat nor skinny. Therefore, you are correct when you say that I am not very stout. Also, if the object of this journey and the path leading there were mine, there would be many troubles for me. But because they relate not to me but to my body, there is no trouble at all. Sorry. Purport. Sorry for yawn. I didn't really sleep last night. I went to sleep at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So, okay. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that one who is advanced in spiritual knowledge is not disturbed by the pains and pleasures of the material body. The material body is completely separate from the spirit soul, and the pains and pleasure of the body are superfluous. The practice of austerity and penance is meant for understanding the distinction between the body and the soul, and how the soul can be unaffected by the pleasures and pains of the body. Jaḍa Bharata was actually situated on the platform of self-realization. He was completely aloof from the bodily conception. Therefore, he immediately took this position and convinced the king that whatever contradictory things the king had said about his body did not actually apply to him as a spirit soul. Stolyam karsham vyadhaya adayascha kshutrir bhayam kalir icha jaracha nedra ratir manyur aham mada shucho dehena jatasya ihi me nasanti. Fatness, thinness, bodily and mental distress, thirst, hunger, fear, disagreement, desires for material happiness, old age, sleep, attachment for material possessions, anger, lamentation, illusion, and identification of the body with the self are all transformations of the material covering of the spirit soul. A person absorbed in the material bodily conception is unaffected by these things. But I am free from all bodily conceptions. Consequently, I am neither fat nor skinny, nor anything else you have mentioned. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Deha smriti nahi jar, sangsar bandhan kahan tar. One who is spiritually advanced has no connection with the body or with the bodily actions and reactions. When one comes to understand that he is not the body and therefore is neither fat nor skinny, one attains the topmost form of spiritual realization. When one is not spiritually realized, the bodily conception entangles one in the material world. At the present moment, all human society is laboring under the bodily conception. Therefore, in the Shastras, people in this age are referred to as Dvipada Pashu, two-legged animals. No one can be happy in a civilization conducted by such animals. Our Krishna consciousness movement is trying to raise fallen human society to the status of spiritual understanding. It is not possible for everyone to become immediately self-realized like Jaḍa Bharata. However, as stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.2.18, Nashta prayesh vabhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. By spreading the Bhagavat principles, we can raise human society to the platform of perfection. When one is not affected by the bodily conceptions, one can advance to the Lord's devotional service. One second, I'm just checking to see if this verse is quoted twice. It's not. Oh my god, there's a whole section added. Oh no, it is given, sorry. Sorry. Nashta prayesh vabhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. The more we advance our freedom from the bodily conception, the more we are fixed in devotional service, and the more we are happy and peaceful. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya says that those who are too materially affected continue the bodily conception. Such persons are concerned with different bodily symptoms, whereas one freed from bodily conceptions lives without the body, even in the material condition. What verse are we reading up to? Let me check. Reading up to 13. Okay, a couple more verses. Jivan mritatvam niyamena rajan Adyantavarya vikritasya drishtam swaswamya bhavo dhruva edyayatra tarhyuchate so vidikritya yoga. My dear king, you have unnecessarily accused me of being dead, though alive. In this regard, I can only say that this is the case everywhere, because everything material has its beginning and end. As far as your thinking that you are the king and the master and are thus trying to order me, this is also incorrect, because these positions are temporary. Today you are a king, and I am your servant. But tomorrow the position may be changed, and you may be my servant, and I your master. These are temporary circumstances created by providence. Purport. The bodily conception is the basic principle of suffering in material existence. In Kali Yuga especially, people are so uneducated that they cannot even understand that the body is changing at every moment, and that the ultimate change is called death. In this life, one may be a king, and in the next life, one may be a dog, according to karma. The spirit soul is in a deep slumber caused by the force of material nature. He is put into one type of condition and again changed into another type. Without self-realization and knowledge, conditional life continues, and one falsely claims himself a king, a servant, a cat, or a dog. These are simply different transformations brought about by the supreme arrangement. One should not be misled by such temporary bodily conceptions. Actually, no one is master within the material world, for everyone is under the control of material nature, which is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the ultimate master. As explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ekale Ishvara Krishna Ara Sabhabhritya. The only master is Krishna, and everyone else is his servant. Forgetfulness of our relationship with the Supreme Lord brings about our suffering in the material world. Vishesha Buddher Vivaram Manakcha. Oh, sorry, I didn't sing it. Vishesha Buddher Vivaram Manakcha Pashyamayanna Vyavaharatonyat Ka Ishvarastatra Kim Ishitavyam Tatapirajan Karavamakinte. My dear king, if you still think that you are the king and that I am your servant, you should order me, and I should follow your order. I can then say that this differentiation is temporary, and it expands only from usage or convention. I do not see any other cause. In that case, who is the master and who is the servant? Everyone is being forced by the laws of material nature. Therefore, no one is master and no one is servant. Nonetheless, if you think that you are the master and that I am the servant, I shall accept this. Please order me. What can I do for you? Purport. It is said in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Aham Mameti. One thinks, I am this body, and in this bodily relationship, he is my master, he is my servant, she is my wife, and he is my son. All these conceptions are temporary due to the inevitable change of the body and the arrangement of material nature. We are gathered together like straws floating in the waves of an ocean, straws that are inevitably separated by the laws of the waves. In this material world, everyone is floating on the waves of the ocean of nescience, as described in by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Prabhupada has quoted this many times. Miche mayar bashe, jacho beshe, kacho habu dubu bai, Jiva Krishna das, e vishwas korle toar dukanai, Radha Krishna bolo re sabai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states that all men and women are floating like straws on the waves of material nature. If they come to the understanding that they are the eternal servants of Krishna, they will put an end to this floating condition. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 3:37, Kama esha krodha esha rajo guna samudbhava. Due to the mode of passion, we desire many things, and according to our desire, our anxiety, and according to the order of the Supreme Lord, material nature gives us a certain type of body. For some time we play as master or servant, as actors play on the stage under someone else's direction. While we are in the human form, we should put an end to this nonsensical stage performance. We should come to our original constitutional position, known as Krishna consciousness. At the present moment, the real master is material nature. Daivi hiesha gunamai mama maya durattaya. Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Under the spell of material nature, we are becoming servants and masters. But if we agree to be controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and as eternal servants, this temporary condition ceases to exist. Okay, this is the last verse we're reading for today. Unmattamata jaravat swasangstam vatasya me vira chikitsitena artha kiyan bhavata shikshitena stabda pramattasya chapishtapesha. My dear king, you have said, "You rascal, you dull, crazy fellow, I am going to chastise you, and then you will come to your senses." In this regard, anyways, whatever. In this regard, let me say that although I live like a dull, deaf, and dumb man, I am actually a self-realized person. What will you gain by punishing me? If your calculation is true, and I am a madman, then your punishment will be like beating a dead horse. There will be no effect. When a madman is punished, he is not cured of his madness. Purport. Everyone in this material world is working like a madman under certain impressions falsely acquired in the material condition. For example, a thief who knows that stealing is not good and who knows that it is followed with punishment by a king or by God, who has seen that thieves are arrested and punished by the police, but they nonetheless steal again and again. He is obsessed with the idea that by stealing he will be happy. This is a sign of madness. Despite repeated punishment, the thief cannot give up his stealing habit. Therefore, the punishment is useless. So we shouldn't punish thieves, I guess. Just let them steal. Just joking. When I was in Keshavji Gaudiya Math, there was a thief that was coming every day during Guru Vashtakam before Mangalarti. And every day he was coming at that same time and unsuccessfully trying to steal this lady's purse. And so then one day we left the purse as bait there. Like it was the lady's purse, but there was nothing in it. Like she took everything valuable out. And anyways, whatever. Anyways, then we captured him. And I'm not going to tell the rest of the story because it's pretty violent. Okay. So tomorrow we are going to read Jaḍa Bharata's reply to Rahūgaṇa. So we're going to continue reading verse 14 and 15. Bharata continued to carry the palanquin, but finally Rahūgaṇa pays respects and begs forgiveness. Then Rahūgaṇa's humble submission and Rahūgaṇa's inquiries to Jaḍa Bharata's response. And then, so that's what we'll read tomorrow. And then the day after that is going to be Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharati Goswami Maharaj's appearance day. And so I'm going to read something about Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharati Goswami Maharaj, and then we'll continue reading the day after. So there's Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, day after a break, and then the day after we'll continue again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashmar Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmar Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmar Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Mahabhagavat Srila Gokshtadas Babaji Maharaj ki Jai, Nitil Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki Jai, Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki Jai, Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath, Shara Gosai Prabhu ki Jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki Jai, Naam Achay Shlahai Das Thakur ki Jai, Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai, Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Raja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kund ki Jai, Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Devi ki Jai, Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki Jai, Shri Gopeshwara Mahadev ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai, Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai, Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams. Oh wait. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Alright, Haribo. Oh, and for Jumna Prabhu, no, I don't. I've never read anything by Sadaputta Prabhu about Vedic cosmology. I don't know anything about Vedic cosmology. Yeah, I've never studied this before or anything. So, yeah, we're going to be approaching that soon, aren't we? Oh, and Ganga Didi, please let us know how it is there in South Africa. Is it still going on, these riots and this whole craziness there? Are you safe right now? Please let us know. All right, Dandavat Pranamas, everybody. Haribo.